Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
What's up, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion each and every week. And this week on the show, we're going to be talking about The Eye, the latest episode of Amazon series, The Rings of Power.
No. Think you're a little confused there. This isn't the Middle Earth underworld. This is Star Wars. I don't know what show.
In the notes, it said The Eye, and I went on my smart TV and I asked Alexa to watch The Eye, and I watched it, and it was kind of confusing that there was this volcano in Star Wars, but I thought it was Mustafar, right?
You're like so
Mustafar looks weird.
You're like, so elves are canon now. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff.
We always talk about the Star Wars Marvel crossovers. I wasn't expecting the Lord of the Rings. Interesting. Okay.
Right.
Want to see Elrond and Yoda meet? That would be interesting. That is the extent of my Lord of the Rings knowledge. I got one character name, and the rest is gone.
Cut. I mean, Elrond is a bit of a deeper cut there.
I feel like they'll get on. I would feel like those two characters would get on well.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I
They'd be buddies.
Yeah.
They can compare ear lengths. So great. No, we're here to talk about Star Wars. We're here to talk about that other The Eye episode from the Andor show, the Star Wars show that's on Disney Plus, not Amazon. And we're going to be talking about that. We're so excited to break this one down. We've got a great panel here. My name is Chris, and joining me is my good friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Ben. Hello, Hannah. Hello, everybody. Very excited to be talking about this episode. In the intro, you hear me say every week, what I like most about Star Wars is that it's fun and it's all around good times. I have to say, though, I feel like this episode kind of breaks that because I really loved it, but it wasn't fun and it wasn't all around good times. It was really upsetting in a couple of places. That was dark. But good. It was good, but dark. It messed with me in that sense. So I really can't wait to get into everything and just talk about this show that just keeps getting better and better in my book. So yeah, gonna be a great episode.
Heck yes. Also joining us, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be so excited to be stressed out watching Star Wars, but here we are. Another excellent episode to talk about tonight. I'm not going to stall anymore. We need to get into this pretty quickly because I have so many thoughts.
Yes, and also joining us from the Raeside, it's Hannah.
G'day there. Now, I just finished editing together my reaction video for this episode, and I counted. I said the word wowee a total of 17 times in this episode. Wowee.
Wait.
And I think I might just make a compilation of wowee.
I was going to say, please tell me that you have like a thing on the bottom left corner that says wowee counter, and every time you say it goes
wowee
1,
counter.
2, 3. I've seen people do that.
Let's count how many
really
wowies
funny.
we've got in here.
Yeah.
But I'm with Ben. Let's get into it. I just want to jump straight into our discussion. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So real quick, punch the subscribe button if you haven't. You can support us by super chatting with us, by becoming a channel member. We've got a Discord. You can join it. Ben throws out the link on social media quite often. And please review the show if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app. Let's get into it. Wait,
all right, that's
right.
No, that's old information.
That's
So-
not. That's
I forgot to update the graphics there.
Oh.
We got too busy on the pre-show talking about Mr. Clean, so we didn't have
Usually,
time.
Last few weeks, it's just been there, and I've
To
been taking
update.
it for granted, and I didn't. I just hit it without even. That was,
It's not even right. You're missing a
Wait.
word.
It's
the.
I.
Oh, this is terrible.
All right.
Hey!
all in favor of this episode beginning again. Say aye. All right, let's get into it. We're of course talking about Andor season 1, episode 6, the Eye, not I, the Eye, written by Dan Gilroy and directed by Susanna White. Kind of bringing to a conclusion the latest little mini arc, little trilogy of episodes within season 1 of Andor. And let's kick things off how we always do it. We'll go around the table, give our initial impressions of the episode. And Ben, as always, we're going to throw it to you first. What did you think of the Eye?
Yeah, that was an episode, guys. That was a damn good episode. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised at this point because this show has continued to build on itself. But I mean, this was, I think, the best episode yet. And, you know, the intensity was ratcheted up to a point I didn't think was possible. And, you know, I just go back to, like, I think the standard would have been just to do, you know, half episode where you just introduce the characters. And then the second half of the episode is the heist. And that would have been it. The fact that they took the time to go back and spend basically 2 episodes making us care about these characters. And to the point where the first episode, I'm like, I couldn't remember half their names. Now I'm like screaming that some of them are just getting hurt. Like the idea of them getting hurt, the idea of them possibly dying just fills me with dread. And that's great storytelling. I feel like some of these characters are just as fleshed out as some of the characters that have been around for 40 years in Star Wars. And that's not a dig on any other characters. That's a testament to how great these characters are, that I can watch this and feel something. I have characters I've only known for a few weeks' time. And, you know, yeah, it's just so deep and so powerful. And the storytelling, the writing, and of course the action, the drama, and the, you know, everything about this just is firing on all cylinders. So I'm not going to keep just blabbing on here because I have so many things I want to get into specifically, but I will start off the discussion by saying this episode was incredible.
Incredible. Yeah, I will echo a lot of what you said. And there is, as you say, a lot to get into. Hannah, we'll go to you next. On a scale of 1 to 10 wowies, how would you, what are your initial impressions of the Eye?
Yeah. Well, I think in this episode, the thing that impressed me the most is how engaging it was. Like, I did not look away from my screen for a split second because I just thought that there's something going to happen in the next moment. And I felt like the whole 50 minutes was like that. So, you know, there's so many amazing parts, but that was the thing I like kind of coming away from the episode. I was like, wow. I didn't breathe or blink or flinch for 50 minutes just then. Like, that was really, really engaging and an enthralling piece of Star Wars media. But yeah, that was my first, like, that's my takeaway from it. I think it was just so well. Yeah, there's so many elements that made it so engaging.
So last week you were saying that you weren't really feeling like Andor was connecting with you in the way you were hoping, the way you usually do with Star Wars. Do you feel differently this week after this episode?
Yeah, and I was actually reflecting upon him because I think it was in our final thoughts of last week's episode, and I was kind of wrapping up saying, "Oh, I bet you next week I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, oh yeah, Andor was fantastic," and it's actually I'm going to go back on everything I've spent 3 hours talking about, and I'm kind of doing that. I still didn't like fully connect or enjoy last week's episode, but also I completely understand it now because of this week's episode. Kind of like what Ben you were saying of the fact that we had to actually spend time with these characters to make this episode have that bit of a punch when the character, certain characters got hurt, died, or split up or whatever. Like I felt like to get that punch and emphasis, we had to have really a lot of slow down time with them essentially last week. So I'm still very quite flat on last week's episode, but also I have maybe some more kind of rounded understanding of why that was still an important episode of Star Wars for us to lead us to have this punchy emphasis, action-packed, dramatic episode of this week, if that makes sense. So it's it's still flat, but it's meaningful. It's meaningful.
Absolutely. Chris, over to you. Your thoughts on episode 6?
It's very difficult for me to articulate how I feel about this episode because just to sum it up, I just feel like it was perfect. I just feel like everything was executed perfectly once again. And kind of to move forward off the starting point of what we were talking about last week, this is the point where this show as a drama has that action moment in it and actually looks a little bit more from a genre perspective like the Star Wars that we're used to seeing. And as a result of that, you had a lot of people who weren't really feeling last week's episode or even not feeling the series in general because of how dramatic and kind of dialogue heavy and character based it's been and how little action it's been. They're kind of coming on board now, okay, no, this is actually good. Anyone who's stuck with the series, so I feel like both audiences have kind of been brought together by this episode. The people that have enjoyed and kind of like the more slower paced, more detailed style like this because it was a payoff for all the details that we've been getting and all the character studies that we've been getting. And then all the people that kind of like Star Wars when it's a little bit more action heavy and faster and more intense, they were on board because we were kind of back to that here. So it was definitely a great kind of crescendo moment for the series, but, not at all unexpected for me because it was the same thing in the first 3 episodes. The first 3 episodes are paced almost exactly the same way, where really most of the action was in the 3rd episode. And this happened again. So really what we've gotten essentially is 2 Star Wars movies so far. The episodes 1 through 3 was a little Star Wars movie, and that was episode 1 of the Star Wars Andor this season quadrilogy, quadrilogy. and then this is the conclusion of episode 2, the sequel movie, the second chapter of the story. So all 3 of these episodes together kind of come together really, really well. So but yeah, just internally, it continues to be a more detail-oriented show because when they're able to make it interesting when people are just saying words and looking at each other, then of course they're going to be able to make it interesting when they're shooting at each other and there's all this action. And I feel like maybe some of the budget that they might have saved the last week by having just really a bunch of conversations be the entire episode, I think they were able to put into the ending of this episode and having a really great action sequence in it. It's just an absolutely beautiful kind of sci-fi sequence at the end with them exiting the planet during the meteor shower event. The Eye was really something of that quality. I don't know. I can't say that I've ever seen that outside of a movie theater before. I think that scene right there might be one of the most well done special effects scene I've ever seen in a streaming or television show. It looked so good. I watched it on my phone, which has a really good OLED display. I watched it on a 4K TV. In both instances, it really, really held up. And I guess my thoughts that I want to kind of keep getting back to as we dive deeper into this episode is the volume holding up? Because the resounding feedback that I see, and I feel this as well, is that while the volume perhaps allows us to tell some stories in some places we might not be able to, there's a little bit of a trade-off to that, and perhaps filming scenes on location in various parts around the UK on built sets, and then just taking the extra budget just to add in effects when they can in key moments, might end up with a better quality product than what we've been getting with the volume. And I'm interested to kind of go over that when we talk about the different aspects and parts of this episode visually.
Yeah. I think we'll come back to that absolutely as we talk about this episode. I will say for me that, we're 6 episodes into Andor now, and I sort of had a realization today when I was thinking about this episode, thinking about what I was going to say on the podcast. And that is, at this moment, I think Andor is now my favorite of the new Star Wars shows. And that's not to take anything away from any of the other ones. I hate that I have to put that caveat on it. This isn't intended as a dig at Mandalorian or Kenobi, which is still perfection. I will hold out. I still think that show was everything I wanted it to be.
We get it.
Yeah. But this show delivered in this episode in a way that I wasn't expecting, and in a way that I haven't seen before. It was, as I said off the top, it was upsetting. The way Nemec dies. We'll get into all the meanings of his death and everything, but the way he goes down first with the roll of credits to the face, and then his reaction to it, and Vel shooting him up with morphine essentially to keep him alive so they can get him out of there, and then go into the four-armed doctor to survive it, to try and revive him, and he still doesn't survive. Like it's upsetting. It was visceral. And then as you were saying, Chris, is a gorgeous episode. And then the conversations they were having were really kind of provocative and evocative and really really tense and interesting, and there was a lot of meaning behind everything that was said. And then the whole heist sequence was tense. It was action-packed. It was faster and more intense. And everything was so meticulously planned. And I don't even mean that from a character perspective. I just mean that from like a directing perspective. Like the dude that manages to grab Cassian, and he's got his arm around him in the cockpit, and he's gonna choke him out. Like if you watch through all the scenes where they're getting those Imperials to rob the bank, essentially, that guy is kind of giving them the stink eye the whole time. You can tell he's waiting for his moment, and then when he sees it, he grabs it. And yet, through all of that, it still managed to be kind of hopeful and joyous at the end, even though it was so upsetting and visceral in other places. And I've never seen such a complete picture of what the Rebel Alliance is in any other Star Wars media. Set aside the shows, but even in the films, it's such a complete, full image of what this movement is. And if Andor, we're only at the halfway point. There's still 6 more episodes to go, so who knows how we'll feel, or how I'll feel in 6 episodes time when we're talking about the finale. But right now, these last 6 episodes have delivered on everything that I could have possibly wanted.
Here's the thing: is I think a lot of times Star Wars leans on being Star Wars. Like they know that if you have a character and they light up a lightsaber, people are going to get excited, and you don't really need a lot more than that to get people pumped about Star Wars. Like, okay, let's just pay Ewan McGregor to come back. Let's put Hayden in the Darth Vader suit. Let's have them fight each other with sticks, and then boom, everybody will watch. And that's kind of like I don't really
That's
want
really,
to.
That's really simplifying the
Well, here's the
Obi-Wan
thing.
show.
Is
That's a lot more going on in there.
I gotta say, I have to say that obviously that the people go beyond that. But I'm saying that's the minimum. That's the minimum there. That's the bar for Star Wars. That bar is not so low for other media. Like, you can't just have two people fight in other media and have it be a spectacle. You have to build it up. You have to make it into a spectacle. Star Wars already has it pre-made into a spectacle because you have this massive IP and all these situations that people already know about and already have feelings about. And a lot of people add to that. And there's been really good moments like the dialogue between Anakin and Obi-Wan, Anakin Vader and Obi-Wan, and there's been great moments in The Mandalorian, and Book of Boba Fett has had some great moments in it. Like, there's been some great moments for sure. But like, there's points where, you can kind of tell, like, okay, there is kind of a lower bar here based on the fact that they're dealing with characters and situations that are already popular, that they know people are going to have nostalgia for it, are going to be interested in it automatically. They don't have that luxury with Andor. There's really nothing in Andor by itself that people just freak out over. It is all, they have to build it all from scratch, and they're doing that. And so they're doing it like another piece of media that isn't Star Wars, and they're doing it like it's a new IP. And that's why this really feels like the most complete show, and why it feels like the only Star Wars show that is good within itself completely as a show, and not just good because it's Star Wars. If you had the same story and you took the Empire and the TIE fighters and the blasters out and the few elements that are Star Wars, which there's not a lot, it still would be a good show. You can't say that about the other Star Wars shows. If you take the Mandalorian armor and the character of Baby Yoda as a derivation of Yoda out of the Mandalorian, I don't really know if that works as well. If you take the Force out of the show, I don't know if it works that well.
I'm going to push back a little bit, even though I agree in principle with what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I will push back.
Hypothetical debate.
Yes, let's do that. I agree with what you're saying in the sense that I think this show has done a better job at making itself relevant outside of the Star Wars-ness of all of that. But I will say, I do think Mandalorian, does it lean on the Star Wars-ness? Certainly. Same with Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I do think those shows, when you strip away the Star Wars, there are good stories at their core. The story of Din Djarin and Grogu, take away the Mandalorian armor, take away the Baby Yoda-ness, and you make that about, just some guy, some medieval knight. You set it in Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or whatever, and you make Grogu a 6-year-old instead of a 50-year-old. That's still a meaningful story. Like that can still be a really meaningful story. And same with Obi-Wan and Anakin, like the story of, two people who were brothers, who loved each other, but wound up having this really intense falling out and then, meeting again for the first time. Again, I think that's a really meaningful story. Now, where again, I do agree that those things tend to lean on Star Wars, and sometimes to the detriment of the story that they're telling, certainly.
And it covers up the bad execution. That's what I mean to say. Is I'm not saying that the premises of the stories and kind of the key points of the stories aren't good, because they are. Like the climaxes of all of these things have been really good climaxes, and it's just that there's been points that have been rocky, and I feel like people are watching because they have those nostalgic hits, they have those touch points, those familiar things. And I feel like they wouldn't be able to weather those storms of the low points in those shows without those things. Whereas Andor, there's none of those low points. And when there are some of them, like for instance, being a little bit too un-Star Wars-y for people, I suppose, it's still the show is strong enough to keep people interested even through that.
Yeah, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. And I do think Mandalorian in particular, and Book of Boba and Obi-Wan to lesser degrees, but Mandalorian in particular, it goes for the wow factor sometimes.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the wow factor that it chooses to go for is, hey, remember that guy?
Yeah.
Remember Luke Skywalker? He's pretty cool. Remember Ahsoka Tano? She's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It will go for that. Andor, when it goes for the wow factor, it's like, what if we turned the sky green with asteroids? And we're like, yeah, that's a wow factor. That looks really good.
She's like, yeah, I'm in this. Yeah.
Looks really, really good. And I will agree with something you said earlier, Chris, as well, which is I think that's one of the best visual effects I've ever seen on television. Maybe there's a dragon shot here or there that can rival it, but it's its own thing.
And it's not, again, it's to be clear, and you might mean the same thing too. It's not just, the effect of the meteors. It's like the whole scene and flying into them and the lighting of the scene. Like the perhaps that might be something that they use volume technology for, and that's using it in a better way.
I think it is
lighting great, that's kind of where you can use it.
Yeah, I will say if you look in the credits, ILM Stagecraft is listed in there, which is the people that do the volume, and so I do think we are seeing bits and pieces of the volume in this. It's not totally devoid of the volume the way Tony Gilroy talks about it.
They were using that prior to the volume even being a thing, like that we knew about. Like they were using it during the sequels and Rogue One and Solo, like all around the cockpits. It's this big video wall thing, and it's not.
I remember seeing a cover of a VFX magazine when Rogue One came out, and it was the U-wing cockpit surrounded by a screen showing the hyperspace, blue.
But then Tony Gilroy's like, nope, no volume in this show. Nope, don't.
I mean, that's where you want to use.
To the man.
That's where you want to use it, is a situation like that, because you're creating an environment that has to be completely fabricated, and there's no other way around it. You can't make a real meteor shower. So,
but see, in the Book of Boba Fett, where they have the campfire scene on a bit of sand, I feel like they could find some sand somewhere outside and do that scene.
Okay, real quick, I don't know if we want to get into this now, but I'm just going to say this about the volume, is that I see a direct correlation, a direct parallel between the advancements of CGI and how much it got used versus the advancements of the volume and how it got used. In regards to, you kind of have this technology that's out there that no one really knows about, then it just comes out of nowhere and they start using it a lot, and then they're like, oh, we can do anything with this, so they start using it everywhere, and it starts getting out of hand, and then you're like, this looks kind of fake, this is kind of, maybe we need to take a step back or two from this, and then they kind of go back into, okay, we can use it sparingly when we need it. I think in both cases, like, you get, like it was a wow factor in The Phantom Menace or Jurassic Park or whatever for CGI. But you get around for Revenge of the Sith, and it's like, okay, it looks great, but also you've seen a ton of other movies that it didn't look great. Everybody knows what bad CGI looks like. Just like the volume is a incredible tool that it needed to happen. You needed to have Mandalorian do all that because Mandalorian needed to prove that Star Wars could work on TV, that it could work within a manageable budget, and that it would actually draw a crowd, because Mandalorian was the first of its kind, really, truly. But now Andor is paving the way for, you can do high budget stuff, real locations, all this kind of stuff, and do it on TV, and it's really good, and it draws crowds and gets accolades. I've seen nothing but praise about this Andor so far. So I think and also the how the internet reacts to this stuff is in regards to like, CGI is great, CGI sucks. The volume is, oh my god, the volume sucks. And I'm like, wow, God, you guys turned out like really quickly. I mean, I get it, but also a little weird.
Yeah. No, it's true. I think the volume works best when it's paired with something tangible, something else that's tangible within the frame beyond just the actors. I think it works well when it's extending a set, when there's something else that's built there, and the volume is sort of behind that because the desert, some of the desert stuff in Book of Boba Fett, the campfire one that you brought up, Hannah, in particular, is egregious. You can see the bottom of it. You can see where the wall meets the floor.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's but you know, all you have in that frame is Tamura Morrison, Ming-Na Wen, and a fire. If you had like some tables and stuff in the background, then you're not necessarily going to notice that seam quite as obviously. And so, when I think about The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, where the volume was used most effectively are in scenes where they built a whole bunch of other stuff to go with it. That, within that 360 space, there was other sets. But even within The Mandalorian, when they shot the first Boba Fett episode, the tragedy, where they just went out into California. I guess, I don't know, Chris, you'd know, but they drove 2 hours one direction down the highway, and we're like, all right, now let's film here. There was a tangible, like, noticeable difference to me in just the vibe, the feel of the show as soon as they went out and started filming, even though, they didn't go anywhere particularly exciting or interesting. They just, drove 2 hours down the road from the studio and said, all right, how about here? And then now you get to Andor, where, I want to know how long they spent out in the Scottish hills filming these episodes, right? Like that. Just gorgeous scenery.
The fact that this is all built around a real dam in Scotland, like this is a real place, and you have the CGI add-ons, but you look at it, like the basis of it is all real.
It's it's like all that. You could visit it. Yeah,
I think that helps in regards to when there's close-up shots of the dam. It's just all real. It's all there. It all looks you can see it's all craggy, and there's obviously they haven't, it's been there probably 100 years, and it's dirty. It's and that's what Star Wars is supposed to look like. And it works because in universe it makes sense. And that stuff, it's hard to fake stuff like that.
Yeah. And so what I want to say about the volume is that I still see enormous potential in that technology. I think the future of filmmaking and certainly television making involves the volume in one way or another. They just have to continue to advance the technology that they can do more with it. Because I think the other thing that is holding the volume back is that it's still so new that they have to play it a little bit safe. And so, you get a lot of deserts, and you get a lot of trees, and you get a lot of, just sort of rocky areas. When we think about the volume and when we think about the potential for it, especially in Star Wars, we think of something like Dathomir, or we think of something like Umbara, these planets that we saw in the Clone Wars that are, it entirely made up of, animation and CG. You can't go somewhere and film, Dathomir. There's nowhere that looks. There's nowhere that looks like that.
That's set. Let's grow some weird, glowy looking plants.
But you could put it up on the volume. You could project it on that wall. So much in the same way that the debate through the 2000s was CGI versus practical, and then what ultimately you have to find the middle ground. I think it's the same thing. You want to find the middle ground between the volume and real actual location shooting, and also some green screen too, because that still has a place to play in this.
Real desert.
Real desert. Is it that hard? There's this desert, right? Like Nevada. Is that not desert? I don't even live in
right
the
there.
And I'm I could point you to where you could film this scene right now.
You could find somewhere in California that's desert. Yeah.
No, I didn't hear. A lot of Tatooine was California.
Yeah. Arizona is right there. You could just go over there.
Return of the Jedi is just Star Wars California. It's redwoods and desert.
Yeah.
I love it.
So but again,
about the episode.
Yeah, we've talked about the technology making the episode.
What's happened in the episode? Let's go into that.
Yeah, let's get into it. Yeah, what sort of struck me about this episode, and we're kind of starting at the end here, but this is really this cements the show as a precursor to Rogue One because almost everybody dies. You know, Cassian walks away, Vel walks away, Cinta is still behind enemy lines, so who knows what happens to her. But the other four, they don't make it out of these episodes, and it is showing. This is what I was talking about off the top. You know, it's showing the cost of rebelling in this galaxy in a way that, again, no other show has really attempted. I think, you know, we're seeing what it means to actually stand up against the Empire and what you are risking, because 4 out of 7 don't make it out, and one of them's still behind, as you said, behind enemy lines.
What happened to Gorn? Captain Commander
shot.
Gorn.
He was the first one to get shot. I actually forgot about him. I watched the episode through. I'm like, wait, what happened to him? They're not going to go back and show him. And then I watched the episode again, and he's like the first person to go down.
Yeah.
I thought Tamarin was the first person.
No,
Tamarin gets shot right after, because they're in the middle of the firefight.
Because he's running,
he's like, Skier, cover me, and then Skeen does not cover him, and he just gets shot.
Yeah, that's right. But
Skeen's a punk.
Before that. Yeah,
Skeen's a punk. He's like, cover me.
Do that on purpose.
Yeah.
We're on to you.
Skeen.
Yeah, it's you know, Gorn and Tyraman really get unceremonious endings in this episode. Like they go down without much fanfare.
Because you don't always need fanfare, Dominic.
Yeah, I agree.
But that is just pounding down hard the reality of what actually would happen in the situation, and the fact that you know, you're on a battlefield, people just die, and you have no time to mourn them. You have a little bit of a moment where they're just like, "Where's Taraman?" And it's like, and you can see the look on the faces, like, just like, don't ask, like, so. But that's what's great about this, and the fact that it is a precursor to Rogue One. We're heading that direction, but it's also a much darker version of Rogue One. They are trying to support the rebellion, but they're taking hostages. They're holding children hostage, like doing some really bad stuff. The bad guys are the ones that are like, hey, why don't you let the kid go? Why don't you not do this? And they're like, no, we're going to kill you. And, you know, that it's really dark stuff, and it's not painted as something as heroic as happens in Rogue One. It is this, they're doing a terrible thing for good reason, but they're still doing a terrible thing, and people die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in Rogue One, everyone's death. Nobody goes out unceremoniously in that movie, right? Like, everybody gets their moment when they die. Again, in this one, Taraman and Gorn just shot down dead. But then you brought it up, and this goes back to something we talked about a lot with the first 3 episodes. And Chris, I think you made this point that in those episodes, right? Yeah, the bad guys were kind of the ones doing the right thing if you go by the book.
Yeah.
They were investigating a murder and, you know, trying to bring the murderer to justice and all that sort of thing. In this episode, you have another moment of that. And Ben, you mentioned it. They take the commandant's son hostage, and the colonel, who isn't quite as much of a you know what as the commandant, but he still doesn't seem like a particularly good dude. He's the one that's like, just let the kid go. Like, that's what he's saying when he draws his gun on Nemec. He's not saying, you know, let all of us go. He's saying, let the kid go. Like, we'll continue this little heist, this hostage situation, but let's leave the children out of it. And you're like, yeah, he's got a point there. And they show the commandant's kid and his wife, like, they are terrified. You know, they are, you know, yes, they're benefiting from the Empire through the commandant and his life, but, you know, they're also living on Aldhani, so they're not exactly thrilled about that. They don't have the most glamorous life. And essentially, they haven't done anything specifically themselves to, you know, justify them being in this situation. So
I mean, this is like, a complete 180 shift from what Star Wars originally was. Like, you know, so many people got killed on the Death Star, and there's really no mention of it. You know, it's like, wow, this thing, you know, they showed the Death Star blowing up Alderaan. You feel terrible for Alderaan. You have that moment of Obi-Wan having to sit down because of the emotional weight of so many people dying. But then you then see the Death Star and every single person that is a part of that as just black and white evil because they were a part of destroying this other planet. And so when they all get killed, it's like everybody's happy, everybody's celebrating. You just hear the rebels screaming of being
we
so
just
happy.
killed 5 million people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, like that kind of level of black and whiteness, you know, that's something that is very unrealistic. Like when two countries or groups are fighting each other at war, it's not as simple as everybody on one side is evil and everybody on the other side is good. It's very rarely that situation in reality. And this show really shows you how that is. And then here's the other thing too, when you think about it. Right now, the rebellion is a very small movement, and everybody that is a part of the Empire were formerly a part of the Republic. They were the heroes in Star Wars. They were the ones that the Separatists were killing. And there you had at least a little bit more black and whiteness because the Separatists were mostly droids. So these droids were killing all these people who were part of the Republic, and you were supposed to feel bad for them. And then all of a sudden, after Sidious ascends to power, it doesn't automatically make everybody who's a part of the Republic evil. And it also doesn't make everybody who's a part of the Republic just like that they're behooved to join the rebellion, because a lot of people don't even know what the rebellion is. It's just starting. We're seeing like the beginning of the rebellion right here. So maybe a lot of these people a little bit further in the timeline might join the rebellion or might have joined the rebellion if they die before prematurely. So it's such a realistic take. It's so nuanced. It's what makes this show so great that, you know, you're just seeing, you know, the individual like family situations of everybody. I mean, you see, you know, Cassian's family, and then the woman that kidnapped him and stole him from his family and then became his new family in the first grouping of episodes. You see Mon Mothma's family more and more as the show progresses, and that now you see the family members of Imperials and how they are affected by the choices of the Empire. And it's just it's really a great nuance to look on just the situation. And again, I guess the final conclusion on this is the antagonist of this show is the system. It's not a person. There's no one person in this show or group of people that are these evil bad guy villain characters like you're used to seeing in Star Wars with the Sith and Tarkin and people like that. Like it's you're seeing that the real evil is Palpatine installed a system that is evil, that is ruled through fear and control and exploitation of people. And everybody in that system is being hurt. Everybody in that system is being exploited, because even when you do your job, you end up in a life and death situation because the situation pits people against each other, fighting over resources and fighting over freedom.
The one thing about this show I really enjoy, and talking about this conversation of like good and evil and who's the good guys, what's the good side, is I like what you said there, Chris, of the antagonist is the system. I also like to think an antagonist of the show is if someone who is indifferent, and maybe I think that's going to be a general theme throughout the show of indifference and like, you know, not doing anything, standing by, is actually like the biggest threat, the biggest wrong thing to do. And the most protagonist kind of storyline, I think the most good characters we'll see in the show will be, you know, I think will be Cassian, because he's quite indifferent at the start, and at the end he's going to be like really for the cause, really for going after what he think is right and figuring out his morals. And I think we'll get to this. I don't know if we can get to it now, but the whole Nemik's manifesto, that whole concept and how Cassian receives it and what that means now. Like that is just so deeply symbolic for like so many reasons, and it's so fascinating. But yeah, I think that's like, I just was thinking about that, and I was like, I think indifference is the bad guy here as well, like that to stand by.
The only thing I'll add to this, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the quote unquote bad guys here, the Imperial characters, haven't really done anything explicitly terrible yet. They haven't blown up a planet. They haven't massacred a village. They haven't really done anything. They're definitely a-holes. Like they're all a-holes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and they definitely, the way they talk about people, the way they use very dehumanizing language. You have Patergaz in the earlier episode, talking about we're doctors and we treat germs, basically comparing Imperial citizens to parasites and germs. That's pretty messed up. And then you have the guy in this episode talking very just totally down to the Donnie and all the people stuff. So and you watch this show, you'd have to be from another planet or just have a completely whacked out moral system to not see them as villains. Not beside the fact that all the clothing and how they act and all the system that support them and all the iconography definitely points them as villains, but they aren't necessarily, as we're saying here, not explicitly mustache twirling, I'm going to blow up your planet type of villains. They are more, as Chris is saying, like the system. They are complicit in the system. They're okay with it. They see what's happening. You have Mon Mothma, who is the one person, and you have all these characters here that are kind of talking about stuff that's happened to them, why they're in this fight in the first place, what's happened, what the Empire did to them. We haven't seen anything, but we're trusting that things, and then we find out Skeen was a liar. Like none of that happened to him, so he was just doing that. So, but it is interesting how it is just kind of the Empire, this whole dark cloud looming over everyone. It's either who is supporting that dark cloud and who is trying to rally against it. Yeah,
it's interesting, right? Because Skeen at the end of the episode, he says, I'm a rebel, but he's also only out for number one. He's only out for himself, and he kind of tries to draw Cassian into that with him. And again, it's sort of the idea that he'd be okay. I get the impression that Skeen would be okay if he would be okay with living in the Empire if he could be rich, if he could get that 40 million credits, he'd be okay. He's not in it. It's sort of like what Han Solo says in A New Hope. I ain't in this for your revolution, princess. I'm in this for one thing, money. And that's Skeen. That's who he is. Certainly.
He's DJ.
Yeah.
He's the guy that doesn't really care about the cause, and he's sitting over there as a mirror image of our hero, saying, "Hey, you could do this too. You could just not care and come over to my side and be selfish." And Cassian making that choice to not do the most selfish thing. He does kill the guy. But it is this.
It was impulsive. It was very impulsive.
Of altruistic type of move, which is actually stay true to the cause versus just ultimately betraying it.
Yeah. Cassian strikes me through these episodes as someone who does believe in the cause, but is trying to convince everybody that he doesn't, including himself. Chris, last week you brought up the sort of dropped plot line of his sister. And I wouldn't even, I don't know if it's dropped, but until we see that it hasn't come back, we'll call it backburnered for now. Yeah. We'll leave it, say it's on the back burner. But that does show that he does care. He's not like Skeen. He's not only out to worry about himself. He does care about other people, at the very least his family. And, Nemec kind of calls him on it at the beginning of this episode. He said, he sort of calls Cassian sort of a hired gun. He talks about how he spent all this time thinking about the role that hired guns can play in the rebellion. He's sort of trying to, here's somebody who's a true believer trying to justify working with somebody who isn't. And, Cassian says to him something to the effect. What is he? I can't even remember what the exact line is, but he says something to the effect of, "I do care." Like he's in his own way. He communicates to Nemec that he does care. It's just he's not a true idealist the way Nemec is, at least not at this point. And I think that's why Nemec leaves him the manifesto, which did I call that or did I call that last week? It's because he realizes this is somebody he could still win over to being a true believer. And that's what that is what I believe Cassian is in Rogue One. And, Hannah, you brought up the idea that indifference is one of the villains of this show. And I think that's what upsets Cassian about Jyn Erso the most, is that she didn't get involved for so long until it directly impacted her. And one of the best written scenes in all of Star Wars to me is Jyn and Cassian back on the ship after everything has gone down on Edu. And where they have a go at each other. They each are taking shots at the other, and they're both right. They both are saying things that are 100% true. She says, orders when you know they're wrong, you might as well be a stormtrooper. That's true. Cassian says, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old. Some of us just decided to do something about it. He's right too. She should have been more involved sooner. Her indifference, earlier she's saying it's not a problem if you don't look up, you don't see the Imperial flag. So what we're seeing here is the evolution of Cassian as someone who cares but doesn't know how to channel that caring into something real, as Luthen would say. And it takes him being recruited by Luthen and then meeting Nemec and probably meeting some other characters that ultimately brings him to where he is in Rogue One, where he does care. He cares more than anything. And it offends him when people don't.
And, Jyn Erso has the iconic line, rebellions are built on hope. Sometimes we forget that it was Cassian who said it first. Cassian gives her that line. He gives her that hope. And you could make the argument that it's Nemec and these rebels that give Cassian that hope. That in a way, Cassian is hopeless in this. He's running scared. He's just looking out for number one. But he realized there's a larger fight here, and he learns to get involved. And you could draw a direct line from Nemec to Cassian to Jyn Erso to Luke Skywalker to all this falling into place and saving the galaxy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's we've kind of touched on Skeen, we've touched on Nemec. We've said goodbye to Taramyn and Gorn, but I do want to return to Taramyn real quick because get an interesting.
Yeah, wait,
reveal.
what's his name? Did I say his name wrong?
Is it Taramyn or Tamarin? I'm not.
Maybe I feel like it's Taramyn.
Tamarind is flavor.
There's Tamarind, and I think Tamarin is a girl's name. No, I think about it. But that's here there. Okay, what is Taramyn?
Yeah, Taramyn. I'm looking at Wikipedia. Taramyn. Taramyn.
Taramyn. Okay,
that's my entry in the Star Wars spelling bee. We get an interesting, whatever his name is, we get an interesting reveal about his backstory, which is that he was a stormtrooper. And something that this show has done, and that's been kind of alluded to in other Star Wars, but this is kind of making it clear, is I always thought stormtroopers were the lowest rung on the Imperial ladder. Like anybody could be a stormtrooper, basically. And what this show is showing us is that no, there's several rungs below that, whether they're the rent-a-cops like Cyril, or they're the sort of recruits that are wearing the Kylo Ren-ish helmets that we see in this episode and that we see Han with on Mimban and Solo. I'll throw this to you. What do you make of the way we're sort of being asked to rethink the stormtrooper and rethink kind of the Imperial hierarchy by this reveal?
Well, I had an epiphany, and I think I was watching between watching the episode and listening to some discourse, the idea that there are no stormtroopers on this base, and didn't throughout the episode it didn't dawn on me that there was no stormtroopers. It just made sense. You have all these troopers, whatever else. We've seen the similar things in Solo, whatever else. And obviously from a production standpoint, we don't want all our heroes to look the same. We don't want them all to wear buckets, and we can't tell Nimic from Cassian. We want to care about this, and there's a explicit, thing here, which is humanizing everyone. No one is a faceless stormtrooper. No one's getting killed, and just you forget about them. Everyone has a face. Everyone has a life, and that's war. But the fact that there's a distinction between the Army and the Navy that I never considered. The fact that, stormtroopers wear spacesuits. They come from Star Destroyers. They are designed for atmosphere and space, stuff like that. You see them on planets, but they're probably deployed from a Star Destroyer or whatever things.
Yeah.
And when there's like an installation here, which is just it's not an airbase. There's the Alkenzi airbase, which is in another location that has TIE pilots and stuff like that. It has pilot stuff. This is strictly military, as in just ground troops, and they're Army guys, and they're wearing Army fatigues and armor, and they're not stormtroopers. And I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense. That actually really does make a whole lot of sense. I never really thought about it. So, and when you go down to Solo, again, I think from a production standpoint, you don't want to put Han Solo in a stormtrooper bucket. You want to be able to see his face. But it also makes sense that, hey, we've seen stormtrooper armor is useless anyway. We know that.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do a damn thing. So why, why not put them in the thing? So, but it is kind of an interesting idea of the hierarchy and the fact that I've always known that there was stormtrooper commanders and you have the pauldrons and all this kind of stuff. But I like that they're adding this extra layer and make me rethink something I've literally known all my life.
Yeah, it's really and speaking of the kind of different, army, where we stationed, what's happening, just talking about the scene of the TIE fighters and the TIE fighter pilot being deployed. First of all, that was just a cool scene. I don't think we've seen that in live action. We've only seen that in animation. Rebels would always
the closest thing we've got is Mando when they're shooting him out of the light freighter, I think. But we don't actually see the stormtroopers load up into it and stuff like that. This is the most detailed version we've got.
And I loved that. I was like, oh wow, we see TIE fighters so much, but literally just this one scene of seeing the TIE fighter pilot get into the cockpit, and it was just like, oh, this is so Star Wars. This is so nerdy. I love it. But it's interesting because I couldn't, and maybe I still don't understand. So the dam, the base of the Aldani base is different to what is it called? Alkenzi?
The Alkenzi Air Base, which is
a little
they
further
don't
away.
They don't go into super. There's a lot of details in the show, and everything pretty well checks out. If you start thinking about no, it's just me. It's not Paul writing. It's just me.
It's wow.
But you have the Alkenzi Air Base, which is TIE fighters. You have the other base. They're talking about moving the air base down and tearing down the whole thing. I don't get the whole idea of the dam, because they're like, oh, there's a river here. It's a sacred river, sacred valley. They dammed at the river. Where does the river go? Because there's nothing out the end of it. In real life, I think it's a lake that's dammed up. It's not a river. I don't know, but it is. I still have a lot of questions. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, that's the one tiny thing where I'm like, what? Wait, what are you talking about? Why they're the little
I'm not
shrine
I just got
thing.
questions.
Yeah, I just want to know, if the dam wasn't there, wouldn't it crash the little shrine that the Dani has? And I don't know.
and it makes going back to Taramyn, although I have something in honor of his name.
Oh my god.
Oh, I love it.
Get that product placement out of here. You
We're
Doritos
We're
sponsored.
sponsored by Doritos now. Did you guys hear?
I must have missed that
The
that
Taco Bell
Discord
guys,
message.
The Taco Bell guys hooked me up with the Doritos sponsorship.
Good God.
Oh my gosh.
Harriman deserves better than this.
He really does.
Oh,
He
man.
really
But,
Angie Terriman.
I actually did have something to say, but I wanted to bring that up. I had it. I thought that was hilarious. So
Like, let me undercut my point by holding up some bag of chips.
yes. So it's not actually that great a flavor. Actually, I don't. But that's why
There you go.
it's not in the trash, having been eaten weeks ago. So
Oh wow.
that one's not coming back. It kind of makes sense that he would be a member of the rebellion, just as Finn is a member of the resistance after being a stormtrooper, because we're talking about like the differences in the military forces. And I think one of the reasons for the differences too, is if you're in an active combat zone, it makes sense you'd have stormtroopers there, like because the stormtroopers have more armor, and perhaps have heavier weapons and more training in combat and such. But if you're just, at just a random base somewhere and there's absolutely no fighting going on, and you can tell, these people aren't expecting actual fighting to ever happen. They're just hanging out. It's their job. They're like security, basically.
That the troops on Aldani are there to look intimidating more than to actually fight.
Yeah, exactly. Which, of course, again, you do in Star Wars, because there's so many remote locations, always get that funny trope of someone gets like reassigned to a remote place thinking it's going to be a really chill job, and then boom, there's a big battle there. It seems to happen multiple
Oh, that's iconic,
times.
isn't it?
Yes. But despite that, that might be one of the differences too. But then that would explain why Terriman is defected when maybe some of these guys wouldn't, because it's like, imagine you're just hanging out on a base. You're not really going to see anything that's going to make you want to defect. You're just collecting your credits and supporting your family. But if you're in an active combat zone, you're a stormtrooper, you're out there blasting people and getting blasted at every day and seeing guys die all around you and getting shell shocked like Finn, then that explains why you might defect from the Imperial forces. So that kind of history makes sense for him, maybe a little bit more than just being an Imperial officer or something like that. And then, of course, that, adds, supports, Gorn, who, he was an officer, but, he had something extremely traumatic happen to him when his partner got killed.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a moment that just sort of furthers this between when Skeen is describing Terriman's backstory, and he says, you should have seen it when Cinta found out, because stormtroopers killed her whole family. And you see this, that's one of those relationships that, even though we had 2 episodes of just people talking, I would have liked to have seen that moment, would have liked to have seen that explored. Like, there's a whole story there of, the stormtrooper, the former stormtrooper having to work with somebody whose entire family was killed by stormtroopers.
That's a very Marvel thing. There was a plot in the recent Marvel show very similar to that.
And there's something interesting. I don't want to derail the conversation too much, but I do have a question for you guys, because this was posed to us via Facebook, our good friend Andrew Lawson, and apparently other people. I heard it from him first, but I know other people came away convinced that Cinta murdered the hostages off screen. And I did not get that impression, but considering the fact that the whole thing with the stormtroopers being, the reason her family doesn't exist anymore, all this kind of stuff, maybe she has a motive. I don't know. I didn't get that impression, but Does anybody else feel that way? I don't know.
No, because Andrew sent that message to us after my first viewing, but before I watched for a second time, and I said I wanted to watch it a second time and specifically watch for that. I know he regularly listens to the show, so consider this our message back to you. I don't think so. For a couple of reasons. One, I still think everybody there has a moral compass and can understand that. At the very least, that child there is innocent in every regard, and I understand that they're using a child as a hostage, and that is pretty bad. But I think they wouldn't go any further than they have to in this situation. And then the other thing too is Vel does say that when the Commodore, I think he says, you're just going to kill us anyway. And then she says, well, that's what you would do. But we're not going to do that. And I think that if the story was canonically, whether we saw it on screen or not, that Cinta killed them, I think that would undercut that line and make that line kind of meaningless and pointless to say. So I think the fact that line is in there, and then just kind of my gut feeling reading the characterizations, I don't think that they're dead. You also, again, there's that practical argument of, well, how did she get away if they're not dead? Well, they were like tied up and like they were bound and gagged. So I'm sure she could have just left them.
Yeah. The only way I see it happening, first of all, just from a practical standpoint of in the storyline, I think we would have seen it if it had happened, if that was meant to be a thing. I think the implication is otherwise. The only way I would see a motive in it is that if they were the only people that saw their faces, that if the reason they could get away scot-free was things, but a ton of people saw who they were. So there really would be no point other than just revenge.
This is where I hope that, much in the same way that we've continued to follow Cyril and we've continued to follow what's going on Ferrix, that we can continue to follow elements of this story as well. Because, Cinta, let's follow this through, because I don't think she killed them either. But let's follow this through. She switches into the officer's uniform and she leaves the family bound and gagged behind, and the two waiter dudes and all that stuff, and she sort of falls back in with the other Imperials out there. Well, wouldn't the wife and the son, especially since their paternal figure there just died of a heart attack, wouldn't they want to get try and catch the people responsible? And so wouldn't they go, all right, line up everybody from the base. I want to see everybody's face here. I want to see who's here. And she's still there. They probably got a good look at her while she was holding them hostage. And maybe through trauma they forget what she looks like, or she finds some way to hide out in the hills while that's going on. But I don't know. There's more to. There's certainly more to Cinta's story, I think, left to be told, and in terms of how does she get out from behind enemy lines? Because that's a real tough place to leave an asset for Luthen and the rebellion.
But at the end, isn't there a shot of her in the Dani clothing back into the?
Oh, is she in the Dani? I thought she was in I thought she was in an Imperial.
I feel like it was Imperial.
It was Imperial, but I assume that to me was suggesting that she just got away. Everyone's looking up at the sky. Yeah. She could just walk away and no one would know.
Yeah, she's just
that was the thing. So I feel and there is some shots in the trailer. It's not of her, but it's of Vel. There's a shot of a person with blonde hair talking to Mon Mothma on Coruscant that looks suspiciously like Vel. And then there's also another shot of her on Ferrix. So I think we're going to get more Vel at least, and I would assume Cinta would also be involved.
Yeah. The other reveal in the episode relating to those two seems to be some loving going on there.
See, they're sharing a blanket.
There you go.
Ever since that line, I was wondering what was going on with that, and at first I thought it was Terramin, because of when it came out that Cassian was a mercenary. I remember Terraman looked at Cinta and said, "Did you know about this?" And and when he did that, I thought that was implying that they were together, that there was some deeper level of trust beyond just like, the mission need to know basis between the two. So that's what I was leaning towards. But then after that, I did notice how Vel and Cinta were always paired up. And then that made me think, okay, maybe. But then I'm like, why not just go all the way too?
They're sitting really close together by the fire, and all this kind of stuff, and they're always seemingly together. And then Terraman's just like, wait, you didn't even tell your girlfriend? What is this?
Yeah.
So, but okay, my theory. I'm gonna say this. My theory is that they're a throuple. And that fixes everything.
You can't let it go that Terraman and that chemistry you read in that one line that was actually setting up the relationship with another character. You're like, no, I can't let it go. It's got to be.
That's very subtle. So that's a very big blanket. That's like a king size,
king blanket,
emperor size blanket.
Well, that's really funny you say that scene, because I know that line you're talking about, but I took that same line as inferring that was the moment that I was like, oh, okay, it's Cinta and Vel.
That's a good
point.
Sam, yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Because it's like, you didn't even tell your girlfriend, like, kind of thing. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. I'm a bit swayed by that one, because that perspective cancels out that in my brain.
It makes a hell of a lot more sense why he would ask her. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, it still implies that, like you said, she would betray the trust of her girlfriend. But, you can see it that way.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting, Andor this is the second, actually third, I guess, if you count Cassian's sister, but the second, person who's significant in somebody's life who has been left behind while the other rebels go off to, continue the fight against the Empire. But we've left Bix on Ferrix, and now we've got Cinta on Aldhani. I feel like there's a whole other show that could be told about just the characters that have been left behind at this point, and them being like, so these people that are very important in my life, are they going to come back and help me escape? Or in this case, you could maybe make the case that Vel and Cinta believe so deeply in the cause that she's willing to say, Vel shouldn't come back for me. She shouldn't risk herself and her position within the rebellion.
It didn't seem like that wasn't part of the plan, that Cinta planned from the start to be away from them and them to get away and her to stay. So
I agree.
What does she have a ship standing by? Is there a ship hidden somewhere that she can get away from? Who knows?
She's got to have somewhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think so. The number of contingencies
and with
that
80 million credits, you can kind of charter something to go.
You can get an Uber, Star Wars Uber, away somewhere.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. I mean, Cassian spent his entire cut on a ship, and he's like, "I'm paying you double what it's worth," so you can find something to get in there.
I've got something to mention that I know if I don't mention it now, I will forget about it. That one of the best elements of this episode is, I think the last time we got something as good as this was Rise of Skywalker. Wait for it. And
go on. Well, careful where you're going with this one.
Rise of Skywalker was good.
Wait.
I'm kidding.
The best thing since Rise of Skywalker in this show is a non-English traditional cultural chanting song.
Yes.
Was so good. It was so catchy.
That's true.
That's another thing in my I just keep plugging my reaction video, but I sing it like every time it comes on. I'm like, hey, hey, it's so
and the
good.
intercutting it between the intense moments, just
right. It's like perfectly balanced.
I like that we
hey,
have another Star Wars holiday other than Life Day to celebrate this year. We've got the I Day.
Every
I Day.
Well, on every October 12th, every 3 years, we have to celebrate the Eye. Yeah.
Yes. All dressed up like that, red robes.
And fireworks like that, that's basically fireworks.
Look, if I lived on a planet where there was like a giant meteor shower every 3 years and it made a giant eye in the sky, that'd probably be my religion, probably. So, I get it.
Yeah, sure.
I loved how disrespectful the Donnie Elder was. I loved that dude. I love that dude.
His mother.
He had he had no time for the commandant, for the colonel, for the commandant's family, for Gorn.
I love the moment when he's talking to the commandant and Gorn is translating and he says something like kind of derogatory, like not very nice. Gorn translated it as something else. The guy looks at Gorn like, that's not what I said. Like, basically, he chooses not to.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It's a good scene. I thought that was that actor. I don't know his name, and he's a very famous actor. The Breaking Bad guy. What's his name?
Bryan Cranston?
I thought it was Ryan.
Yeah, I thought that was something like a good minute. I'm like, that's him, right? Like, that's definitely him. And like,
Man.
I'd love to get Bryan Cranston in Star Wars. I just wasn't expecting. I didn't pick up on that. Yeah, be great.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. The eye. What a great idea. What a great visual. And the chase through the eye with Cassian
amazing.
Flying the bulkhead thing and the TIE fighters chasing him down. Oh.
I was dodging too. I was going, trying to get away from the meteor. It's like coming. Oh god.
The whole mechanics of that is amazing. It could have just been like, oh, it's a ship in a hangar, and they got to load it up, and that would have been enough. The fact that it's on an overhead rail and it has to go through a tunnel and it shoots out this dam from underwater. Like, who came up with this? Tony Gilroy, come on, man.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. They seem to have stopped adding new things to Star Tours, but that feels like it should be a new a variant of Star Tours, or it could be added on to the Millennium Falcon ride.
Oh, please.
They need to update Smuggler's Run like ASAP.
Yeah, it'd be pretty good. The eye, have to go get some coaxium from Donnie for some reason, and it happens to be the day of the eye. Why not?
Oh yeah.
Make it happen.
How exciting would Smuggler's Run be? It'd be much better ride when you're like, oh, you got to steal all these things. Oops, one of your crew just got crushed to death.
Oh my goodness.
One of you just that sounds like
just lie here for a second.
That sounds like the premise of like a horror movie, like a theme park where like somebody dies on every ride. Like 6 people go on and you're losing one. And it's just a matter of...
You have to make a choice. You have to push a certain button to make a choice at the end of the ride, whether you're going to save the guy or take the money.
And even if you push the button, you might not save the guy. You have to go to a doctor with 4 arms. Yeah, good stuff.
Oh, man.
Disney, yay!
I love it.
I want to talk about kind of the way the episode ends. We have the final scene between Cassian and Vel, where he leaves the rebellion behind for the time being. I'll throw this out there to whoever wants to take it. Like, what do we make of that moment, that choice for Cassian to essentially, after being kind of won over by Luthen in the previous episodes, to basically go, screw it, I'm out of here again. I don't want to see you guys.
I feel like it was related to the fact that he had to kill Skeen. I think if he didn't have to kill Skeen, he wouldn't have done that. He would have just, and it wouldn't have been necessary. Like, they would have just given him his money. He would have given the Kyber crystal necklace back. And then I don't know what would have happened after that. But I think when realizing that Skeen was dead, realizing, Vel's probably not going to fully trust him when he tells him why he killed him. So it's safer to maybe point a gun at her while he's explaining it. Like, that's how I took it.
Yeah. And she still doesn't really trust him.
Of course not. Why should she?
Yeah. She's lived with Skeen and they've been eating roots together and they've sleeping on rocks and everything for months. And here's this guy that Separate blankets. Yeah, separate blankets.
Why were they sleeping on rocks? They had a perfectly well set up camp. What's the rocks for? Like, there's
Yeah,
lots
you're right.
of grass
Yeah,
as well.
They were sleeping in hammocks, but
That looked like a really comfortable hammock. And I know y'all had blankets, so who you're lying?
they've been camping. They've been camping for essentially for months on end. So who's she gonna trust?
With some really horny sheep.
The sheep have horns.
That was such a that was so jarring. There was no setup, no warning.
You know what?
Usually you're like, hey guys, I'm gonna make a risky joke.
You know what? This merits? You know what this merits? We haven't done this in a while. Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Yes.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
Star Wars rules. This is momentous. This is exciting. Why, hello there, Ben.
Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
He is the founder of the Star Wars Underworld, Mr. Ben Hart.
How's it going, everybody?
Oh,
that sultry baritone takes on a new meaning now.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I feel like that was timeout. I feel like when we do that, it's like timeout.
Yeah, it's like everybody needs a moment.
Turning me off and turning me back on again. That's my
reset.
Yeah,
Gone too far. Got him
Since we can't, you know how like Han hits the Millennium Falcon. I feel like we should. That's the equivalent of smacking Ben. Is whenever we have to play it. Play that just to get him get him back on back on board.
Jokes for you.
Oh man,
what were we talking about when Ben brought up horny sheep for some reason?
They're sleeping on rocks. They're not, which shouldn't be rocks because there's perfectly fine grass next to it. But they're spending it rough. She doesn't trust Cassian. Is that what
yes. She does. She has no reason to trust Cassian. And he tells her like, search your feelings. You know it to be true when he leaves. Like that's basically what he tells her.
She's always right.
Yeah. When we would likely see her again, as Ben pointed out, there's some trailer stuff that hasn't been in the show yet. So, when they meet again, it will be quite interesting to see, how they view each other. Has she realized what the truth in what Cassian is saying, or does she still think, hey, that's that guy that just shot Skeen for some reason? It also showed, I think, how Nemec really was kind of the glue that kept the group together. In some ways, he was the one that fit in the least, right? Everybody else was really tough. Like they had either they all had tough backstories, or their persona was quite tough. He was the intellectual. He was the one speaking in metaphors and allegories and all of that stuff. And he's the one that's writing a manifesto. Terramin and Cinta and Vel, God love them, but they're not writing a manifesto. And he was the one. If they could have gotten away with Nemec alive, Skeen never makes that offer to Cassian, right? And even and Skeen was the one pulling on behalf of Nemec to go to the doctor. Vel kind of thought maybe the mission is more important than one person, and Skeen, the bad guy in all of this, again, quote unquote, on bad guy. He's the one that's like, no, we have to save this kid. This kid is the reason we're alive.
No, I disagree with that. I think that was a ploy to get the position where he could steal the stuff.
Nah, I think he cared. I think he cared.
That had to have been his plan the entire time.
The performance from whoever that is that plays Skeen is someone who genuinely wants to help. And even in the scene where he's talking to Cassian, he's beaten up about what happened to this kid.
Yeah,
Eben Moss Backrack.
Yeah,
that guy, love him.
Gotta give a shout out.
Great name.
Who would do this if you weren't a true believer? That's the thing, though. Like, who would risk their lives over nothing unless you believed in that something that they're fighting for? Who would risk their lives to, make 80 million credits for the rebellion? Like, unless you believe in the rebellion. And like Cassian, he's getting a huge financial incentive. He also doesn't have much of a choice because he's on the run and he needs somewhere to hide out, and 100,000 credits will help him hide out really, really well. So he's kind of backed into a bit of a corner. And then on top of that, we feel like psychologically the wheels are turning in his head anyway, subconsciously, that he believes already without even knowing it. But Skeen, like, you couldn't betray the rebellion like that if you truly believed. And if you didn't truly believe, then why are you risking yourself for that unless you're trying to get at that money? So I think that in the back of his head, perhaps he cares a little bit about the kid, but I think his number one motivation, I think, is an ulterior motive. His number one motivation is to not deliver the goods immediately, so he has a chance to grab them.
So think this through, right? Like, let's say Skeen doesn't get, Skeen would say Nemec doesn't get hit by the credits.
He's going to find another way to do it. He's just looking for an opportunity at some point to run away with it, and this was just his opportunity. It would have been something else if they'd gone differently.
I think I have a softer image of Skeen than you do, because he strikes me as somebody who, in the previous episode, when he tells this story, I think that's the truth. And I think what he tells Cassian in this episode is a lie to justify what he's actually out there for. Because all through these episodes, he's given us no reason to distrust him.
He's a psychopath.
He hesitated.
Don't give you reasons.
Okay, he could be a psychopath. I don't know. I look at him. I see him in those final scenes, and I see someone who is distraught, who's in shock, and because of what he's just experienced, is like, I can't be part of this anymore. I need to get out of here. And that scheme that he comes up with Cassian, that's his way out, because he's just been traumatized by what he's seeing.
And see, I was a bit confused about, like, okay, why is Skeen so, why is he so, like, hell-bent on figuring out what Cassian's cause is if Skeen himself does not have a cause? My only kind of wrapping my head around that is the fact that he just sees Cassian as competition.
Yeah,
that he is a threat to him. He's a threat to Skeen. Is kind of in this for the money. He is truly in this for the money. And Cassian comes along, who is also in this for the money. He's the one person, but I think that's why Cassian kills him in the end, because he's like, this guy is going to kill me if I don't kill him first.
And if this guy, and what does that, if Skeen was really a good guy who's just traumatized, what does that make Cassian for murdering him? Like, that's the thing. That the fact to justify with Cassian being a hero, to justify Cassian killing him, he has to be a psychopath.
I don't know. His reaction to Nemec's injury. Maybe that actor is just too good. Maybe he's just too good, and he overplayed his hand in that scene. His reaction.
He cared about Nemec.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, I think he cared, but that was he was right in saying he is solo. Like, he's number one. He rebels to benefit for himself. But I think in that, like, he does care for certain people. I think he cared for Nemec.
I think you, yeah. No, all I was going to say is I think there's room for nuance here. I think if he was just a cold-blooded, didn't care anything about the money, he could have just straight up just shot Vel and Nemec.
Why would if that's all he wants? Why doesn't he just shoot them both as soon as they've left, as soon as they're out of the eye?
And he doesn't.
They wouldn't expect it. They wouldn't expect it. Just pow pow.
Well, it's probably the same reason. It's probably the same reason why he suggests to split the money with Cassian. He might need somebody's help to pull off what he's trying to pull off, and also he doesn't know how to fly the ship.
Okay, so shoots Vel, shoots Nemec. As soon as they're away from the eye, then Cassian's there. He said he can make the same. He can make the same pitch to him then, and maybe it's a more emphatic pitch because Cassian now feels that his own life is in danger.
I feel like he would lose Cassian's trust immediately if he did that. He would kill his chances of persuading
I agree
him.
with that.
Well, then he just gets Cassian to take him to the moon and then shoots Cassian and he's out. Like,
But he can't shoot Cassian. Well, Yes, but then how is he going to get to Cassian to take him to the moon?
We're overthinking this.
That's really funny. Cassian, take me to the moon. That's really funny sentence. No, you're missing the point. The main reason this whole storyline exists.
We both had the same thought at the same time.
The reason this part of the story exists is so we can see the surgeon guy. We needed that guy. That's the
we needed more aliens because there haven't been enough aliens.
Yeah,
at this point.
yeah.
Honestly, that's one of my few complaints about the show overall is the fact that it's almost not Star Warsy enough. Like, it has enough Star Wars. It's got blasters. It's got cool gadgets and stuff like that. It looks Star Wars. You got TIE fighters, whatever. I would have, and I'm not talking about like I didn't need an Ithorian to be one of the team members, like going in there wearing an Imperial. I didn't need that. But like, I think, and maybe that was part of the reason, but I think, it would have been cool, maybe one of the team was in a Zabrak or something like that.
Okay, so let me, I can justify a good amount of this. Okay, so this is, there's a specific reason why at least these last 3 episodes didn't have many non-humans in them. And that's one, a lot of the characters are Imperials, and Imperials are speciesists against non-humans, so there's very few non-humans in their ranks, so that already takes a bunch of them out. Then you have Imperial defectors, who of course must by definition be humans, and then you have people that need to pose as Imperials, so they have to be humans. And then finally you have the characters who are posing as Imperials needing to also pose as indigenous people of the area, and so thus the indigenous people of the area have to be humans. And so just from a storytelling perspective, they wrote themselves into a situation where pretty much everybody has to be a human until they get off world, and then as soon as they do, they have someone who isn't a human, which makes sense.
I think there's also a more practical matter that plays into this as well, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the volume versus shooting on location. It's a lot easier to have a bunch of people in costumes that are essentially just clothes when you're out in the Scottish Highlands shooting for months on end.
I hope I can buy those clothes when I visit Scotland.
Yeah, right. But, if you ever hear Anthony Daniels talk about playing C-3PO, especially in the original movie, and, being in that costume out in the elements in Tunisia, it was bad. It was a pretty awful experience. And just so on a practical level, it's easier just to have people out there and be somewhat comfortable in their costumes. Whereas if you, again, this is where if you'd shot it in the volume, well, you're on a soundstage. You can take the costume off very easily. It's easy to fit. You have the supplies around to fix it if you need it. Yep. And that's why I think, we've seen a lot more aliens in things like The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan Kenobi, because it's just an easier situation to control.
Aliens.
Yep, that Grogu definitely falls into that category.
He's somewhere around in this. He's somewhere out there in this time period. Just saying.
He is.
Child. I want to see the baby.
Yeah. So and for all the good that we said about filming on location and everything, that is part of the trade-off. Is it's harder to have a principal important character or even a lot of extras that are in very elaborate costumes, the way an alien or a creature or a droid would have to be.
I hope with this show.
No, but they're shooting in London. They're shooting, or they're shooting on a soundstage. When you put them out in somewhere that's further away, like on a location, you see less. There's a lot less aliens around. Tends to be the Doctor and the companion in those scenes.
I hope with this show that we get what happened with Lord of the Rings and the Shire, is that you can go to the Scottish Highlands and you can go to this dam, and it's like part of the set is still there, and you can like do a tour and like do a whole thing.
Fireworks.
And, like, yes, oh my gosh, the Aldani fireworks. And I feel like they could do a whole thing with that. That'll be cool.
Wow, their tours and figures just went up. Quote Mr. Barman.
Yeah. And then in the sort of the final scenes of the episode, we go back to Coruscant. We Coruscant. We spent the whole episode on Aldhani up until the final moments, and we see the impact of this attack. It's not just the fact that they stole 80 million credits, which will help fund things for the foreseeable future. It's that all of a sudden people are seeing that the Empire might be vulnerable, or that the rebels might be a serious threat. And we see how that, kind of how that impacts Mon Mothma and Luthen. But we also see that they might have awoken the beast in the ISB.
The Balrog.
That final meeting with all the Imperial officers. They're word may be spreading like it's fire across the galaxy as it was on Rebels, but there's going to be a pushback. The Empire's going to try and snuff out these flames as quickly as possible, and I think that's something we'll see next week and in the weeks after. But what did you guys think of those scenes on Coruscant with Mon Mothma and Luthen and the Empire?
The Imperial Senate. We got to see the Imperial Senate. That's awesome. I think this is the first time in live action that we've seen.
Oh yeah.
Imperial Senate. I'm trying to remember if even did Star Wars Rebels show it at some point. I'm trying. I don't
think so.
Star Wars
No.
Rebels.
I don't feel like.
Yeah.
I don't think Rebels never got to like Coruscant or anywhere like that.
I don't think so. So this is like really breaking some new ground for Star Wars, which is really cool. And obviously it brings back that prequel, nostalgia for the Republic Senate. So it's the same
I think the last time chronologically that we saw this place was when Yoda and Sidious were tearing it up in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
In
so
their
it's
duel.
interesting to see that it's still the same place and it hasn't been moved yet, and perhaps it's still there during A New Hope, and when they're talking about dissolving it, that they went in and tore it up again, maybe. So that was really cool to see that. I think that scene went very, very well. I thought it was really fascinating how they chose to have the characters on Coruscant learn about what happened. I thought that was really different, because usually in Star Wars, you would either not see that, or you would have the characters who just completed the mission come back to the characters that are in some stationary place. And we've seen that time and time again at the conclusions of episodes and series and movies and things like that. So having there be no communication directly, because everything's underground and it's like not safe, or they just don't have the capability, and having Mon Mothma and Luthen learn about it from people just reading Facebook on their iPads.
Spacebook.
They have Facebook on their iPads. Now you know how much the Imperial senators care, because they're just on Facebook during the whole meeting while Mon Mothma's giving this impassioned speech about the protecting this group of people. They're just scrolling through Facebook looking at all those selfies from people visiting Scarif, and and then they're like, oh wow, dang, so there was a heist, someone stole 80 million credits from Aldhani, what the heck, dang. That's really funny. And then same with the guy, and that shows you a lot about kind of the mindset of the Coruscanti and that elite that's in a bubble, that like when they first hear about something happening, they're like, oh, how do I get in on the trend of this? Like, how do I tend to be interested and get status out of this? I'm going to get some artifacts from the planet that just got robbed. Yeah. Like I thought that was kind of a telling thing there too. So that was done very, very interestingly, and that's definitely something that I haven't seen in Star Wars quite like that. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
The one thing about this moment, I'm like annoyed that I have to be negative about it, but I wish it wasn't in this episode. I think just like what we were just saying, like what's the word? Just the weight of we're seeing the Senate again. I felt like I didn't get to fully feel like that, wow, here it is moment, because it's like Cassian just killed Skeen. Nemec is like officially dead. Cassian's running off. Like that happened in like a 2-minute period. And then it was like, we're in the Senate. And so I was still like processing what we just understand. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? Oh, hang on, wait, we're in the Senate now? Oh my God. Like maybe that was good. But I don't know. I felt like I wanted that moment to be longer, and like that's the rest of the, start of next episode to be it starts the episode. First scene is that shot of Mon Mothma in the Senate, maybe. But the scene was still amazing. Like it was still fantastic. Right, but I don't know.
I think I'm definitely in your camp there, Hannah. I will echo the fact that I was really hyped to see the Senate, and that was probably my only complaint about this episode. There was only like a 30-second scene of the Senate.
Yeah.
And it's funny looking at this, and I was watching the scene in the trailer, and it looks like there's nobody in the stands, there's nobody in the pods, and I thought, oh, well, the CGI must not be like finished. They must not. This shot must not be finished. And like, no, that's literally what it is in the episode. Like, there's nobody there. There's nobody on the podium. Like, I was really hoping, maybe foolishly hoping for a Masameda cameo or Slime Moore or something like that. Hopefully, we haven't seen the last of the Senate. Hopefully, but I
teasing Slime Moore and not giving us bring on the Slime
Moore was like the
start the hashtag. Give us Slime Moore. Come on.
Look. On the flip side of this, I understand the symbolism of this. That the Senate is useless. No one cares. There's nobody even there. Senators don't show up because they know how useless and pointless this is. And the real fight is out in the galaxy where people are actually doing stuff, and the Senate is no longer valid. It's no longer whatever.
Who made a bigger impression that day? Mon Mothma with her impassioned speech to save the Gormans, or Cassian and Vel and everybody involved in the heist stealing the 80 million credits? Right? Yeah, the Senate at this point is symbolic. It's there to maintain the bureaucracy, as one of those guys says in A New Hope. But it's not the bastion of democracy and the people's business as Padme and Bail and Mon Mothma once envisioned it, and hope that it could be one day again. But the fact that the Senate was not given any fanfare, again, it's sort of par for the course for this show, right? This is what we were talking about off the top. It's not lingering on the Star Wars of it. It's like, what's the point of this scene? The point of this scene is Mon Mothma and everybody around her finding out about what went down on Aldhani, along with, a little bit of, setting the stage for how does the Senate function at this point. But the fact that we're back in this location that we spent a hell of a lot of time in episodes 1 through 3, and in the Clone Wars, is not given the sort of fanfare that, the Mos Eisley Cantina was given when we went back there in The Mandalorian. When Din Djarin goes looking for Toro Calican, you get a whole bunch of shots of the cantina in all its glory, and you get to kind of linger in there for a minute. Whereas the Senate, it's just like quickly get the scene going, get the information out there, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
All right, I think it's time we check in on the super chats for this episode. Again, shout out to everybody being Joel Davis for throwing in some super chats. Start off with this one. To talk about systems, one must wonder. Joel working on his manifesto as well, throwing in the one there. To talk about systems, one must wonder if the Republic was even a good system, considering old Imperial officers who served it had those fascist views from the get-go, like Tarkin or even Anakin. I mean, the whole point of the prequel trilogy is that the Senate, while there are many well-intentioned people, and the Republic by extension, while there are many well-intentioned people in there, do not function the way they're meant to. They're not living up to the ideals upon which the Republic was based. It's been infiltrated, quote unquote, by people who aren't interested in the greater good, doing the best thing that people want, and they're motivated by greed and selfishness. And that's that's why the Trade Federation is able to do what they do in Phantom Menace without any sort of real pushback from the Senate. And just like the Jedi in the prequels, the whole idea is that these institutions may once have stood for something, and they could stand for something again. But the ideals upon which they were founded have fallen away, and that's why someone like Tarkin is right at home within the Republic system in the Clone Wars, at least.
Yeah.
The other super chat from Joel. Back in Legends and technically in canon, stormtroopers are actually an independent arm of the military. They are the elite forces of the Empire.
Elite.
Yeah.
Elite.
Yeah.
Well, and that was this, another thing about Taramyn is, again, it kind of continues what we've talked about with this show, showing us the might of the Empire and getting us to look at things like TIE fighters and now stormtroopers, even though we still haven't seen a stormtrooper on this show, as something different than what we usually think of them. You usually see TIE fighters and stormtroopers as jokes. Zeb can knock two stormtroopers out by taking their heads and bashing them together. Whereas, for Cinta and her family, and anyone that ran into Taramyn before he switched sides, they were probably pretty terrifying. Not something, not people you wanted to meet. You didn't want to see stormtroopers coming down the street. Whereas, on Rebels, let's just say, you see a stormtrooper, you're a little worried, but you're not that worried. Again, different shows with different, purposes. So I'm not saying Rebels is bad because they didn't make the stormtroopers the most scary thing in the world, but it just goes to show we're dealing with a different take on the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah.
All right. Those are the super chats, and that's everything that I have for this episode. Anything else anybody want to bring up before we hit final thoughts and scores out of 10?
Did you really think? Did you really think?
Shoot, I was
this one out?
I was gonna do a thing. I forgot. Oh well, for next week. I was going to do a thing, but next week I'll have to remember for next week. But it's time. It is time for Ben's Connection Corner. Connections in the corner with Ben. It's Ben's Connection Corner. Do.
First of all, shout out Star in Order and thanks to Allie on Twitter at Kenobi's Eope, which is just a great Twitter handle. They have been clipping out clips from the episodes, and they specifically and not only that, made a whole animated intro of Ben's Connections Corner, which we really need to have that on the show sometime.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
For next week. For next week.
That was the thing you were referring to. I get it.
Yeah.
It's a disappointing though, because I really was scraping the bottom of the barrel with this one. Unfortunately, as great as the episode was, just not a lot of connections in this episode, if I'm being brutally honest. Especially, you'll get the idea when I mentioned the first one, which is the button sound. There's a button sound in the control room where Cinta is. When she punches that button, one of the sounds exactly like the button sound that you hear in A New Hope when I believe it's when R2 shows up in the Rebel base and they putting him up on the thing and plugging him in to get the Death Star plan.
Wow.
There's the same thing.
Wow.
I swear I'm not crazy.
Cut.
Go listen to those scenes and
that's amazing.
That sound is ingrained in my brain. As soon as I heard it, I'm like, that's the same sound. I like that. That's really good going, sound designers.
That's worth
good.
a whole
That's good.
connection.
I love that. Yeah.
That's a connection corner. That's a top level.
I feel like I've got one.
Oh, good. Please. Hannah's connection corner. Let's go.
I feel like I've got one. But I'm also open to being debunked on this. But the scene where Vel and Cinta are going underwater and they're traveling toward the dam. I believe that that's the same. They're kind of holding on to some mechanism there to like help propel them. If we think back to season 5 of Clone Wars, the Mon Cala arc, where they're all underwater, this Prince Lee Cha, that whole arc, they use that in a lot of those battle scenes. I think they use those, like Ahsoka uses it a lot, and for Padme to just move people around.
Kind of a big version of it. Like,
I was like,
well,
it's looks funny the same dynamic, but the Clone Wars looks bigger.
I think it might actually be the real thing because there is a real version of that works in the real world where it's just like a jet like engine thing that kind of can propel you through the water and you can grab onto. I think that might actually been they might have just Star Warsified that. So that's a good catch.
I did think that's the same thing. And Matthew Hardy says in the chat, start of season 4. That was a good arc. Pretty sure it's like the first couple episodes.
Mon Cala arc, the
Prince
water
Lee
world.
Charlie.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Also, I'll bring up this one too. Again, scraping the bottom of the barrel, but give me a break here. The glasses that are on the trays.
Yes.
You saw this.
Yes.
The glasses on the trays, they look exactly like what we see in Solo in Dryden Voss's party barge thing.
I thought that.
And there may not be the exact same props. I need to do further investigations and compare things, but I guarantee you they're the same make and model or the same type.
Yeah.
For
sure.
Yeah. So that was another one. The lady at the end mentions Devronian blue. Of course, Devronians are the devil people from that planet.
Right.
Big red devil people.
What?
And then inexplicably, there's a dude in this episode that looks exactly like Steele Saunders, and I can't get over it. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? He's already been in one TV show.
How did you get to London, Steele? We don't remember you taking a trip to London. What's going on?
Steele's out here collecting Star Wars cameo roles like Thanos collects Fidget Stones. Come on, man. I swear to you, I don't think it's him, but God, it looks like him.
we're gonna need some screenshots because I missed this entirely.
Just for the record, it's the guy that goes, "Oh, Eldani, you have something for Eldani? It's on the news." That guy.
Oh.
The guy who's
yeah, that dude,
and someone on Twitter, I think it was somebody interacting with Star Wars Spelled Out. They were like, "Oh yeah, there's this guy who looks like it's like Steele." I'm like, "You're crazy, whatever." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, he does." The more I look at it, the more he looks like Steele. What the hell,
man? What? I'm gonna have to check that out.
Wow.
My God.
Wow.
Oh, that's wild.
And that concludes Ben's Connections Corner, as epic as it was.
It's pretty great. Pretty great.
Good ones.
It did. You all did spur something else that I wanted to ask, because there's a moment in this episode where I'm pretty sure I know what's going on, but I need you all to confirm to me whether I'm crazy or not.
Oh no.
Because it's the moment when Vel and Cinta are hiding in that little highly convenient rock thing.
Oh my gosh, yes. Let's talk about that. How did we not mention this?
This is important.
Talk about crime. Talk about bad guys. This
Okay.
is the most... Continue. Oh.
Yeah, well, there's those Imperials that approach them, and you think, oh, are they going to be caught? And then really, it just looks like one of the Imperials relieves himself outside.
Noise.
Yeah. I was that.
Oh.
We talk about, is this show Star Warsy enough? That is the least Star Warsy scene I've ever
the
seen.
pressure. It's the fresh nature fresher.
When that happened, I'm like, the first time I watched the episode, I'm like, that can't be what just happened there. And then when I watched the second time, I'm like, nope, that's definitely what happened there. That guy was taking a leak. Okay.
Yeah. When that happened, The first thing, as soon as I realized what was happening, I was like, "Oh God, we're gonna have a ball with this on the show. We're gonna have such a good time doing it. Like, this is so ridiculous. The guys are gonna find this so funny."
I was like, I was shocked. I was just like, what?
I was like, what is happening?
Is that? So, I mean,
Hey, they made socks canon. They made ramen noodles canon.
I mean,
a lot of things canon here.
I never thought that wasn't canon. I figured, yeah. Oh my God, there's gonna be a Wikipedia page now about that, isn't there? Isn't there?
Yeah. The peeing Imperial. Oh, horrific. It's not Star Wars anymore.
Oh
well,
my
thanks
God.
to Rebels, we saw Wedge Antilles going to the bathroom. So
that was the singing droid episode too.
the best episode of Rebels ever.
Blocked that episode from my mind.
Man.
Just look at
Is this true, Joel? Is this true? I refuse to believe.
Look at our chat. I'm not.
Oh
Gonna,
no!
I'm not gonna bring it on the screen.
Oh no!
Use the back tube. Come on.
Oh my.
Okay, y'all Wikipedia editors, y'all got too much time.
You've
on your hands.
gone too far.
You don't need
lot
an
of
article for
references.
every damn thing.
Some things can just be.
Question. I've got a question.
As a reference to this,
What's the question? What's the question, Hannah?
Okay, so what we're talking about, we all know what we're talking about. Let me just ask you this question. What happens when you drink blue milk?
Oh no. Oh no.
I
no.
have an answer to that, but I can't say it on air.
Why did you ask that? Why? Why are you taking this here?
What?
Does it? I don't know.
What?
Or what about green milk? What about green milk?
Green milk.
Dominic just walked away for the record.
I
Literally got
don't
up
know
from
how
the
to
camera
put
and
that.
walked
I don't
away.
know how to put that. I don't even know how to.
I've always wanted to do that, so thank you for giving me the excuse.
Perfectly appropriate at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Kidneys process dye, but another organ does not. That's the answer.
Great.
All right,
Learn something new every day, every podcast.
What's final thoughts? My gosh.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you, Hannah. I think this has gone on far. We've crossed into absurdity. I love your miming there, Ben. That was excellent. Ben's like, kill the show. Over, done. Yes, we have officially gone off the rails, like, as the chat is saying. All right, final thoughts.
Messian's for. He's to help us get off the rails and get out the tube.
Final. Shut up.
I didn't mean that.
No more. No.
I didn't even mean that one.
No.
That just happened.
No.
But those goats, though, those sheep.
No.
Hannah, do we want to just kick these two off the show? Will you and I just finish it for you and I can do final thoughts, and these two clowns can just can just go somewhere else. All right, final thoughts and scores out of 10. Final thoughts and scores out of 10 for Andor episode 6, The Eye. Hannah, start us off.
Oh, yay. I'm really excited for next week. I think it's going to be a great show.
This is ultimately my fault because I did bring it up, and I would just like to take this moment to apologize to everybody listening. Next time this happens, I'll just leave it be. We will just ignore it and pretend like it didn't happen in the episode. But that was I will say,
thank you.
A plus pun work. A plus pun work. There. That was very well done. Yeah. Try the veal.
No, but like what I said at the start of the show, this episode had me engaged the whole time. It was really, really thrilling. Lots of elements, lots of things that wowed me. And one thing I didn't mention through this debrief is there was a lot of parts of this I didn't predict, which I really enjoyed. There was, I can kind of tell we're kind of going, people are going to die. But, the whole Skeen thing, Skeen dying, Cassian shooting him, what Cassian's like, leaving. Like, I didn't predict any of that, which I really enjoyed. So a solid 9 out of 10 for me for this episode. Really enjoyed it. It's going to be one I definitely rewatch a lot.
9 out of 10 from Hannah. Ben, what about you? Final thoughts? Score out of 10?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go 9.5. Honestly, like, it was near perfection, if not perfection. Like, the only point I'm taking off of it is not enough Senate, not enough politics in my Star Wars. Didn't think I would ever say that, but here we are. Not enough politics in my very tense and very action oriented episode of Star Wars. But I mean, an incredible episode, absolutely incredible, start to finish. Just a master class in intensity and stress and character development and payoffs, and just, I mean, it really is like this is, I know we're all itching for more Star Wars films and more content on the big screen, but this stuff is as good as anything we've seen ever on the big screen. The only downside to it is it's not on the big screen. I'm watching it on my phone, and that is fine, but it deserves to be projected on a giant wall because it is magnificent. And it's just the characters, the fact that I'm feeling so hard, and I'm not over Nemec. Okay, it's going to be a while. Okay, I'm still not over it, but yeah, incredible episode. I feel like again, for like the millionth time, I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface on this episode and how many great things are in it. But yeah, 9 out of 10 for me.
9 out of 10 from Ben. Chris, what about you? Final thoughts? Score out of 10?
I just feel really privileged that I just get to spend 2 hours a week talking about like what is in itself just an extremely high quality television show, just because it happens to be Star Wars. Like, that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, I would watch this show if it wasn't Star Wars, which is saying, a lot, because a lot of times I watch Star Wars because it's Star Wars, not because it's like incredibly transcendent and maximally great quality. It's just I watch it because it's Star Wars, and I talk about what I like about it and what I don't like about it, and that tends to be it. Whereas this is just, I just like it. I just think it's great. And I think that the pacing of this show, they've really got it down. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's Tony Gilroy who and Dana Gilroy and Susanna White who figured this out after Dave Filoni, who worked with George Lucas on the Clone Wars, hasn't really been able to fully 100% get on the pacing in his shows as well since then. This concept of having 3 episodes tell a story, one episode set it up, one episode be a lot of character building, and then one episode have like a final awesome action sequence. Like it works extremely well in this format, and having those 2 stories so related to each other and have one kind of go into the other and set up a little bit in the first one that shows up in the second one, and keeping some plot points that are still on the back burner kind of alive by showing little scenes here and there, every few episodes to keep up with characters and what's going on with them. Like, I think like Cyril, for example, like that, I think it's really, really brilliant and really deft. And so, yeah, this was a great climax, a great finale to this kind of set of episodes, this like mini film within a series that we got about the Aldhani heist. It just, when we got to the action, it was worth it because it was so well done. That thing I guess I would have mentioned before that I didn't think about until now was like, the camera work, like, when they're in those fight scenes, it's just really close up and it's like shaky camera work. And, that just shows that competent filmmaking right there, that cinematography of like, you know, making you feel like you're in there because you're moving around like you would if you were running around with them. So that was really, really, really smart. So yeah, incredible episode. So excited for the future of this show. As every other episode, this is a 10 out of 10 for me, which means that there's really not much I could have done differently that I think would have made it better. And I think it's just expanding on what Star Wars is. This is providing a drama arm of Star Wars storytelling that is really, really cool, but still packs a punch of the action when it's ready to do so. Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to thank all three of you for not making this joke so that I can make it. I'm going to give this episode a number 1 out of 10. Ba-dum-bum. No, actually,
I was gonna ask you how many sheep horns out of 10 you were.
No. No, I'm giving this episode my first 10 out of 10 for this season, even though I sort of felt like giving all of the episodes a 10 out of 10 up until this point, but this one was the one that fully pushed me over the line. But yeah, this episode, as I said off the top, it ran me through a gamut of emotions, all while keeping me engaged with the story and the plot, had me thinking about what the characters were saying, what they're doing, what they're believing, what they're fighting for, what they're fighting against, all of that stuff, all with incredible visuals, beautifully shot, beautiful music, beautiful acting, just tremendous stuff. And I can't believe we're halfway through the season, and I sort of I'm in awe of the first half of the season, and I can't wait to see what the back half brings starting next week with the beginning of presumably another arc. Gotta think maybe we're looking at the Saga Rera arc next week. I think that would be
for sure. I think
feels cool. Feels from the chat. Chosen Nightwolf gives it a 9 out of 10, calling it an excellent episode. Matthew Hardy goes for the classic 8 out of 10, and Joel dropping in a 9 out of 10. But yeah, I think that's it. I think with that, we can begin to wrap things up for this week.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching and listening to the show. Of course, we'll be back same time, same place next week for another breakdown of Andor. We're going to be talking about episode 7 next time. In order to know what the episode is going to be called, we just have to wait 20 minutes for the next Rings of Power episode to drop. We will know what it's what it's called. But
for next week, just to shake it up, it'll have the same title as House of the Dragon. Just
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's wait. Yeah. Let's wait till Sunday on HBO.
Or if for some reason the episode is called The Big Choke or something, then we'll know it's named after the Toronto Blue Jays. So it'll be all fine.
Oh dear.
By the way,
my condolences.
I was gonna say thank you for the emotional support with the hat this week, Hannah. But yeah,
emotional hat support. Yeah,
it was 8-1. It was 8-1.
That's
in the 5th inning.
That's 8-1.
How?
Heartbreaker.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't
mad. Yeah. It's to the Mariners though, which is like, come on.
The Ichiro-less Mariners.
Yeah.
I didn't know that team existed.
Their stupid shoes on their heads.
Yeah.
What?
Or as the guy from New York said, the Mariners. Yes.
I love it.
Where were we? Oh yes. Next week, make sure you follow at the SWU on social media. And make sure you join us on YouTube if you're around at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's when we're going to go live to talk about the show. And if you want to listen to our pre-show 30 minutes before that, all you got to do is join our Discord, and Ben has the keys to that, so kindly ask him how to join the Discord.
We'll put a
social media,
and we'll put a fresh link in the episode description if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or that sort of thing. We'll put a fresh Discord link in there.
Not a fresher link, a fresh link.
Yes, a fresh. It ends with the H. There's no letters after the H.
It can be the freshest link, though. That's fine.
Yeah, it is the freshest. You'll get the freshest link every week. What the hell are we talking about?
What
is this conversation?
Okay, so this is the part where I thank y'all for being on. I'll go, Dom, thank you first for being on and surviving and being so here.
At this point, I'm questioning. I'm questioning. No, this was great fun to talk about this episode and talk about everything that we did this week, even the silly stuff. But that's what this show brings out, right? That's what Andor's doing. It brings out really thoughtful, engaging discussions, serious discussions, and then it brings out some absolute silliness, which again, we talk about the Star Wars-ness of the show. Star Wars has always had some absolute silliness thrown in there as well. So that does very much feel at home for the Star Wars Galaxy. But yeah, great fun talking about this. Cannot wait to do all this again in 7 days' time.
Heck yes, and you can follow Dominic on social media at DominicJ25. Ben, thank you so much for hosting as well.
Oh yeah, it's a pleasure as always. Speaking of silliness, I love we didn't talk about it, but the moments of the Commandant's wife roasting him and calling him back.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
A little bit fat and satisfied there.
Magnificent. Also, just another example of the show being brilliant and also not being too serious. Not being too serious. Just really great. But yeah, great episode of Andor. Excellent episode of the Star Wars World podcast. But I am glad it's over because I gotta pee.
That's every week.
That's every week. Oh, I love it.
All right, of course, you can follow Ben on social media at Ben Hart with no E. Hannah, I see you have a prop for your outfit.
I know.
You're scaring the living crap out of me by trying to balance.
So
like
close.
every time it wobbles, I'm like, it's gonna fall.
No, don't do that.
Oh man.
There we go. You know what?
Okay.
I didn't even have any reason for this prop. I just wanted to hold this TIE fighter since we're talking about TIE fighters.
Fair.
No, but it was a great show today, fellas. Great episode. Very happy with what we got to see. And yes, I think we're going to go with this arc type of show. So maybe some Saw next week, maybe some more Mon Mothma mayhem, whatever's going to happen there. And I'm still salty that we've never seen this dinner party. I'm still salty about it.
Yeah.
I hope
like
it's
a
a deleted
great scene of Star Wars. And I'm like, oh my God. Anyway.
Maybe that could still happen. Maybe that could still happen.
Maybe.
Flashback, something. Yeah.
Yeah.
The season
I want to see Sly More being fun, okay?
More slime, more. More slime,
Slime
more.
more.
That should be the hashtag.
More slime, more.
Thank you.
We'll go outside the headquarters of Lucasfilm in San Francisco. And we'll just chant that. More slime, more.
More slime,
more.
more.
Slime,
Oh
more.
man. We have a friend
good
in the UK
stuff.
that might help us with that.
Okay.
I love it.
All right.
Great, and of course you can follow
We gotta
Hannah
wrap the
on
show,
social
man.
media at the Raeside, and that's the name of her YouTube channel as well, where you can check out her reactions to all the Andor episodes and other fun episodes involving cooking.
I
And
made the
building.
cereal. I made the cereal
Right,
last
I
week.
saw a little bit of that.
Cereal.
Cereal.
Yeah,
Cereal.
We didn't catch up. That was another disappointing part. We didn't catch up with Cyril. Where's
Yeah.
Cyril? He wasn't in this episode.
I still want to meet Uncle Harlow. That guy.
Yeah. That guy sounds like a big deal.
Yeah.
Uncle Harlow would know what to do.
Yeah.
I want to
my
give a
God,
huge
I-
thanks to Joel for super chatting with us and to all our channel members who help support us. And of course, if you have any feedback, for the time being, our email is swunderworld@gmail.com. That is where you can send us listener feedback. All right, that's it. We are out of here. We'll be back next week for Dominic and Ben and Hannah and all the other great folks we have here at the Star Wars Underworld. My name is Chris, and may the Force be with you.
So I'm looking at the Wikipedia page that shall not be mentioned. And apparently this week was not the first time it has appeared in this show. Apparently in Casa, the first episode, and I can't believe we missed it. I cannot. I'm shocked.
And apparently, there's a Legends quote as well, which I put on the screen for everybody.
What?
Oh my goodness!
Oh wow, that's insane. I'm going to use
really
that
crappy episode
in my day-to-day life.
Yeah. So yeah, appearances in universe. There's 2 episodes of Andor, an indirect mention in that Rebels episode. Apparently, they mention it in Phasma, the novel. Star Wars Resistance has an appearance, and 2 episodes of Galaxy of Creatures. Which, okay,
well, creatures need to be creatures.
They do. All right, seriously, enough of this. It's a wrap.